Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Stephen Howard. It gives me great pleasure to be presenting this to your group. I love the various things that you're doing to help women around the world, and so hopefully this presentation will just add to your database of knowledge. Oh, I gotta go over here. I'm the author of 21 books on leadership, professional development, personal development. I've also been a leadership development facilitator for the last 25 years and have trained and mentored and coached over 10,000 leaders during that period. Right now, I do a lot of one to one leadership coaching. I'm a certified health coach and also a great deal of international experience. I've lived overseas outside the United States for most of my adult life. I lived in Singapore, traveled all over Asia for 21 years, and then lived in Australia for 12 years. So I'm trying to approach this subject with an international perspective. What I'm be presenting to you today is based on the research I did for my book, Better Decisions, Better Thinking, Better Outcomes. It's a book I'm very proud of. It's won a couple of awards. And so, really, this is the research that went into that book. And we think about our brain, and I laugh at this picture sometimes because my first job out of college was with Texas Instruments. And we promised the world a paperless society many, many years ago. And I think we're all still drowning in paperwork. We're drowning in this 24/7 world we live in. We have constant interruptions. And all of this, we don't think about it, but it impacts our brain. And therefore, that impacts our decision making. And what happens to our brain today impacts our long term brain health, which is really what I want to share with you. So, our brains are very busy. We have like 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And as adults, we make about 45,000 remotely conscious decisions every day. And most of these, as the slide shows you, is remotely conscious. Like when you dress, do you put your right shoe on first or your left shoe? If your shoes have laces, do you tie the right shoe after you put it on? Or do you put the right shoe on, then go to the left shoe? And then which shoe do you tie the laces on first if it has laces? So where do you put your purse? Where do you put your car keys? Briefcases, where do you, everything is so just, we're on autopilot so much throughout the day, but our brain is still working. And that's one of the reasons, for instance, why we typically make poor decisions or less than optimal decisions in the afternoons than in the morning, because our brain from the time we wake up is making decision after decision after decision, and it gets tired. Our brain processes about 400 billion bits of information per second, but we're only roughly aware of roughly around 2,000 of these. So there's a lot going on upstairs in our heads that we're not even consciously remotely aware of. And this statistic just shocks me. The average person checks their mobile devices 100 times a day. Now think about that. If you're awake 16 hours a day, if you're sleeping for 8, 16 times 6 is 96. So that's roughly 6 times an hour, or roughly every 10 minutes that we're awake, we're checking our mobile devices. So give your brain a break. Put your mobile devices away right now. I just put them on airplane mode and just focus here. And we have this urban acronym called FOMO. One of the reasons we check our devices all the time is that we're afraid. We have this fear of missing out. Well, I highly recommend to you that FOMO should really mean fear of mind overload, because that's what we're doing. We're overloading our brains throughout the day, and this is having long term impacts for the health of our brain. Now, stress is one, we've all gone through prolonged stress now for almost 24 months through this coronavirus pandemic. Stress also has an impact on our brain. We think of stress impacting our hearts, our blood pressure, our circulation, but it also impacts our brain. And stressed out people fall prey to what we call binary decision making. Binary decision making is the brain, to protect itself, tries to limit our options to two things: binary, A or B, this or that, black or white, one or two. And very often, when we're trying to reach an optimal decision, either in our personal lives or our professional lives, we need options. We need more than just two things to consider. And we need to consciously stop and create those options. Let the rational side of our brain go to work, because the emotional side of our brain is the one that is limiting our options to A or B, one or two. And that's because the brain is wired to be more reactionary under stress, which, Say, a car coming, you walk across the street and a car is approaching at high speed, you want to be reactionary. If you're walking somewhere and a snake jumps out, you want to be reactionary. But for most of our times, we don't want to be reactionary, though that's the autopilot mode that we're on. And therefore, particularly under stress, our body reverts to that historical, almost prehistorical level of reacting to stress. And so, what we typically do, particularly in the workplace, is we think multitasking is a way to increase productivity. Well, there's a couple of things I hope you take away from this presentation. And one of them is multitasking is not the answer. And the reason for that is, and I'm talking cognitive multitasking. I mean, any of us can watch a movie and eat a meal. If we're watching on TV or something, any of us can, do the dishes and have a conversation. But that's not cognitive multitasking. Cognitive multitasking is like right now, if you're listening to this presentation, but you also have your email open and you're trying to go back and forth between the two. You're trying to think about, oh, that email. What is that? How do I respond to that person? That's cognitive. You're trying to make your brain focus on two things, which it can't. The brain can only focus on one thing. So multitasking is detrimental to focus because you're literally switching back and forth. When you're switching this back and forth between emails and phone calls and other tasks, you're basically preventing the brain from focusing and from engaging in deep problem solving, cognitive processing. And that's why you often don't. You make mistakes if you respond to your email right now. You might misread an email and respond inappropriately or inaccurately. All these constant notifications from our computers, our smartphones, our tablets jolt our stress hormones into action. And it's the same stress hormone, again, as if a snake had popped up at you. So I want you to think about this in the future, after the presentation, hopefully. But the next time you're working on something and you got your phone by your side and you get a notification, try and just see what your body does. Typically, you're going to jerk a little bit. Because that notification, you're gonna snap. You're gonna look towards whichever direction your phone's in. You might shake a little bit because, particularly depending on the time of day, when you're not expecting, for instance, a text message or something in. Those are the same stress hormones that your brain is secreting into your body and your body secreting into your brain, as if again a snake had jumped out in front of you. So these notifications are training our brains to be in a nearly continuous state of both stress and fear. And the inability to focus is one of the leading indicators of dementia. So basically, we're training our brains, particularly all you young people out there, all you millennials and Generation X's out there, you're training your brain not to focus. And that inability to focus is a leading indicator of dementia. So you're going to find out what you're doing now is going to impact your brain health in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. Stanford University did a wonderful research study that revealed that regular multitasking makes it difficult for people to focus on a single task. In fact, they said that multitasking results in goal irrelevant information to compete with goal relevant information in the brain. This shocked me. And because here's what when I write my book or edit my books, I usually do it in 3 to 3.5 hours. But every 50 minutes or so, I get up and make a new cup of coffee. And previously, before I read this research, I'd be downstairs, the kettle would be boiling, and I'd be checking my phone for text messages, look at my emails, seeing if I had any voice message, what I had to return. And then when I went back upstairs to write, it took me a while. It usually took me 10 or 12 minutes before I could refocus on the writing. Well, this research showed me why, because what was happening is that goal irrelevant information, the text messages, the emails, all that's irrelevant to my goal, which was to write the book, to spend 2 or 3 hours writing the book. And it was now competing with that goal relevant information. So now what I do when I write, I put my phone on airplane mode, literally. And therefore, even when I go down to make my coffee, if I look at my phone and it's on airplane mode, it kind of reminds me, don't touch the phone, don't worry. And so while the kettle's boiling, my brain is still thinking, how do I transition to the next paragraph? If I've just finished a chapter, how do I kick off the next chapter? Am I happy with what I just wrote? Am I happy with what I just edited? My brain is still focusing on the project at hand, even though I'm downstairs with no piece of paper, no pen, and I'm making coffee. My brain is still working. So the research study results are very clear. And we probably could have figured out the first one ourselves. If you're daily multitasking, it makes a person less effective when they are multitasking. You don't get better at multitasking, quite frankly. If you're multitasking daily, you're going to be less effective when you're multitasking. The surprising part was you're also less effective when you're not multitasking because that your brain is have been trained not to focus on a single thing. And you're also less effective at being able to prioritize to achieve your goals. Now, when a person multitasks, they literally reduce their intelligence levels as measured by the ability to comprehend and understand what they're seeing and what they're hearing. A landmark study from York University in the United Kingdom showed that multitaskers score about 11% lower on a standard comprehension test than those who are not multitasking. Just think about that. That's 10 or 11% right out the drain of how much you're comprehending when someone's talking to you if you're also looking at your phone or thinking about something else at the time that they're talking to you. Which means it's interesting. I often talk to people, and you talk to somebody and they'll make a comment, "Oh, I forgot you said that." The truth is, they didn't forget. They were probably multitasking at the time they were receiving the information, which meant they never received it 100%. So they literally didn't forget the information. They just didn't receive it. So, by the way, teenagers are worse at this. So if you have teenage children or young 20-year-old children, and you're talking to them, and a couple of days later, you say, "Oh, I forgot you told me this." That's because they weren't listening to you 100%. Same thing if you, the adult, say that to your child. Multitasking diminishes mental productivity, it elevates brain fog, and it increases stress. So there's nothing good about multitasking. And here's one of the things I hope you remember from this presentation. Sandra Bond Chapman, who founded the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas in Dallas, said multitasking is as toxic to the brain as smoking is to the lungs. So again, I'm going to say that again because I just hope you remember that. Multitasking is as toxic to your brain as smoking would be to your lungs. So just think about that the next time you're thinking about multitasking, particularly cognitively. So the gist of what we want to talk to you today about brain health and what you can do. First, I'm going to give you some negative statistics, and then I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do. So it's not all negative. There are some things we can do. First of all, before the pandemic, this is in the United States, the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association estimated that there would be a 67% increase in dementia, Alzheimer's, and stroke in the United States by 2030. And that by 2030, over 10 million people in the United States and 76 million people worldwide would be impacted by dementia, Alzheimer's, or stroke. I guarantee you those numbers will be higher now because of the prolonged stress that we've all gone through as a result of the pandemic and the lockdowns and the societal issues around masking and unmasking and being locked down and being let out of lockdown and going back into lockdowns, whatever you've been doing. Treating these diseases will be a $1 trillion industry by 2030. Now, I'm a skeptic enough to say one of the reasons that we haven't found a cure for Alzheimer's or dementia is because it's not as profitable as treating those illnesses. Unfortunately, I think our pharmaceutical companies will spend more time making money treating these illnesses rather than preventing them. But the beauty of it is we don't need to prevent these illnesses through drugs and pharmaceuticals. We can do it through lifestyle changes, which is what I'm here to tell you about today. The American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association also estimated that 60% of Americans will develop a brain disease in their lifetimes, partly because we're living long. We can't prevent it 100%. We can certainly reduce our risk for it, but we can also delay potentially the onset of it if we are susceptible to it. And already, and one of the reasons that this is increasing and adding to our stress levels, already about 10% of people in their 60s are already looking after their own aged parents. Surprisingly, even 12% of people 70 years or older are also looking after one or more aged parents. So we, we're becoming caregivers in the years that used to be called our golden years, and so we've gone from being child caregivers to now parental caregivers, and so it's just adding to our stress. Now, here's some specific information for women. And again, it's very startling. Nearly 2/3 of the patients diagnosed with brain disorders are women. And it's not just because women are living longer than men. And typically, women live between 3.5 to 4 years longer than men, depending on which part of the world we're talking about. 20% of women are diagnosed with brain disorders by the time they're 65. So 1/5 of you. So however many women we have on the phone call or the webinar today, 1 out of 5 of you is likely to be diagnosed with some sort of brain disorder by the time you reach age 65. And this is scary. One of the reasons is estrogen. Estrogen is really the master regulator of energy production in your brain. It keeps your brain cells healthy and it forms new neuron connectivity. And as you're all aware, estrogen dips around menopause, just a fact of life. And it is now believed by scientists to be a leading indicator, a leading factor in brain health issues for women. There's a lot of studies going on regarding this these days. And again, as I said, if you go back even just 10 years ago, the medical industry basically said, well, women more susceptible to Alzheimer's because they lived longer. Well, no. In fact, interestingly enough, one study showed it takes roughly 20 years for Alzheimer's to develop in your brain. Okay. For the typical person, Alzheimer's develops somewhere around age 70, late 60s, early 70s. Well, what's 70 minus 20? 50. When does the average woman hit menopause? Somewhere, give or take a couple years, around 50. So again, they're really starting to be able to link this dip in estrogen through menopause, through increased risk, as well as all the other risk I'll talk about today for women and Alzheimer's. So it's shocking, but again, I'll show you some steps you can personally take to reduce your risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, our brain is the most metabolically active part of our body. It takes up 10 times more fuel than any other part of the body. It changes more than any part of the body. One of the myths I learned in my research was, I was taught in high school that our brain stops growing somewhere around age 25. Somewhere between 23 and 25. It wasn't true then. It's now science know it's not true because they have the MRI technology. They can show that we continue to grow in brain cells into our 70s, probably even into our 80s or 90s. There just haven't been enough 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds around to test. But your brain is continuing to grow. It's something called plasticity, neuron plasticity. So we're constantly growing new brain cells, but we're also constantly killing our brain cells at the same time. And so as you're going to see later, the brain is the biggest user of oxygen and blood in our body. And so that's why we often say what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So anything that you do that's good for your heart, exercise, eating well, reducing your blood pressure, reducing your cholesterol, is also going to have a direct impact on your brain. So that's part of the good news I'll be sharing with you. Your health of your brain is going to be a vital factor in keeping dementia and other range of brain issues, brain diseases at bay. I thought, and I got into this subject because I was a primary caregiver for my father, and he had early stage Alzheimer's before he passed away. And in doing the research, which I started because I was his primary caregiver, I wanted to know how to handle him better, how to help him cope with Alzheimer's better. One of the most interesting things I learned in the research that only about 5% of Alzheimer's patients is a result of DNA. Another 5% has to do with things like brain injuries, trauma, other things like stroke or other health issues. 90% of it is a lifestyle disease. And so this is why if you fail to ensure the proper health of your brain, by not adequately supplying with the essential nutrients, the vitamins and minerals, the oxygen in the blood it needs through your lifestyle habits today. Will directly impact your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's as you get into your 60s and 70s. So basically, brain health is a lifetime pursuit. Now, as I said, some bad news. Our brain will age. To some extent, brain aging is inevitable, which means our brains will get smaller. As you'll see here, our brain mass will reduce, our cortical density will thin, our white matter will shrink. That will slow our processing and our cognitive functions, and our neurotransmitter systems will generate less chemical messages. That's going to happen to all of us. How quickly that happens will depend on what we do. For instance, obesity in midlife, say in your 40s to mid 50s, may accelerate brain aging by up to 10 years. So if you took two people from the same societal background, same economic background, living in the same country, same cultural background, and one person is obese, let's say they're both 50 years old, the person who is obese, their brain will effectively be like 60 years old, whereas the non-obese person would have a brain that would be more typical for a 50-year-old. So it accelerates the actual aging of our brain. And it's caused by all those bad things: sugar, soft drinks, diet sodas are terrible. All those Coke Zeros and Pepsi Zeros and all that kind of stuff with all those Splendas and other things that people put in their coffee and tea, all those artificial sweeteners. They are connected with speeding up your brain aging, and also with smaller overall brain volume, resulting in poor episodic memory and literally a shrunken hippocampus. So again, science have been able to show the direct correlation here. Lack of mental stimulation contributes to retirement-related cognitive decline. So not socializing, not doing things that makes your brain mentally stimulated. I wish I'd known this before I took care of my father, because I allowed my father to just sit around and watch TV. He used to love to watch these old Western movies on TV, things he'd probably seen 5 or 6 times before. And I thought that was good for his brain. No, watching TV is not a brain stimulating activity. Doing a crossword puzzle is, doing Sudoku, going out in nature and walking. Those are brain stimulating activities. And I already mentioned the statistic earlier about 60%. So really the aging brain is a lifestyle choice. So it's up to each one of us what we want to do today to protect the long-term health of our brain, or not be worried about it till later and suffer the consequences thereof. So weight is one of the key factors. And so here, high levels of abdominal fat in old age is directly correlated with the reduction in cognitive function. So it's just not obesity in your midlife. If you allow yourself to put on excess weight in older age, it's directly going to be related to a reduction in your cognitive functionality. Men, so those of you who have men in your lives, or no men, and there's only 1 or 2 on the phone call today, if those men who pack on the most abdominal fat in their 40s are most likely to develop dementia later in their lives. So you increase your risk for dementia in your 60s and 70s if you put on a lot of abdominal fat in your 40s and 50s. Fat cells and inflammation throughout the body and the brain. Fat cells that increase inflammation throughout the body and the brain. So again, you have fat cells. What it's doing? Well, guess what? It's causing inflammation in your body, and therefore it's causing inflammation in your brain, reducing the flow of oxygen and blood to your brain. Whoops, I went too fast there, because seriously and literally, people with too much belly fat literally have smaller brains than people their same age who don't have excessive belly fat around. So abdominal fat is one of the worst things for our long-term brain health. So as I say here, it is a lifetime pursuit. So what can you do? Well, first of all, what don't do? All those unhealthy habits in our young adult years and midlife: junk food, fast food. I mentioned obesity, excessive sedentary time, sitting around too long. One of the worst things you can do for your brain is to sit in meetings all day and then go home and sit on the couch and watch television. But as a matter of fact, UCLA has done some research that showed that the more sitting you do, again, the smaller your brain becomes. It actually shrinks. So the less new brain cells you develop and the brain cells that you're killing off, you actually end up with a smaller brain. Lack of physical exercise, and then again, sitting too long in meetings and phone calls. The good news is it's never too late to start on a path to healthy brain health, no matter what age you are. So start today, start tomorrow. I mentioned the lack of mental stimulation, sitting too much or too long. As I said, the UCLA research study shows that it results in brain thinning. Fatigue disrupts the speed at which brain cells communicate, and this shocked me because I lived in Asia, as I mentioned, and I used to fly across the Pacific 4 or 5 times a year. Those long flights, I don't sleep well in airplanes. I'd be up by the time I, got off a plane, say in Dallas. I've reached the United States at San Francisco. I've had to wait in the airport to make a connecting flight, a fly to Dallas. I rent a car and I drive an hour, hour and a half to the hotel or the meeting venue or where I'm going. And I've been up at this point anywhere from 38 to 42 hours. I won't do that anymore. And here's why. Research shows that when you've been awake for 17 hours consecutively, so that's a normal day. You get up at 6 a.m., 11 p.m. is 17 hours. Your brain is effectively operating as if you had a blood alcohol content of 0.05. Now, that's not beyond the legal limit of drink driving in the United States, but in Europe and Australia, the legal limit is 0.05. So I'm not saying you have alcohol in your blood, but your brain is operating as if you had a blood alcohol content of 0.05. When you've been awake for 22 hours or longer, remember, I used to be awake 39, 40, 41 hours. 22 hours or longer, your brain is operating effectively as if you have a blood alcohol content of 0.10, which is above the legal limit to drive or operate machinery anywhere in the world. So for people, nurses and doctors who work back-to-back shifts, people in other industries who work back-to-back shifts or long hours, one of the worst things they can do is get behind the wheel of a car. It's one of the reasons, particularly in the United States, that fatigue is the number one cause of car accidents in the United States. And so fatigue is disrupting how quickly our brain is communicating. It's slowing us down, and it's bad for us. Sorry, you just want to double check here. So another study, University of Bordeaux in France, studied 6,000 participants, all 65 plus. And they identified the risk factors that impacted dementia were smoking, having a body mass index of over 25, not exercising regularly. And I want to congratulate Catherine in the background there, who's stretching and whatever. Good for you. That's exactly what you should be doing as you're listening to this. Not eating fish twice a week, not eating fruit and vegetables 3 times a day, high blood pressure, hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood sugar. These are all the top 8 risk dementia factors for those in that study of 65 plus. All right. I promise you some good news. Finally, I'm going to give it to you. Healthy lifestyle changes will have a far-reaching effect on your long-term brain health, including your ability to cope with diseases and with that age-related decline I mentioned earlier about the fact that the brain will age. We can't prevent that, but we can figure out how to cope with it, and we can delay it. We may not be able to prevent it, but we can delay it. Research shows that people who experience the least decline in cognitive functions and memory all share the very same characteristics, and it's just the opposite of the previous slide. They do partake in physical activity. They pursue intellectually stimulating activities. They stay socially active, and not just with family members, being socially active with other people. When family members get together, what do you talk about? Other family members, typically, or past events or what have you. You talk about friends, you start talking about other things, sports, politics, the weather, anything that's stimulating. So it's much better. So if you have aged parents, make sure that they're staying socially active with people outside the family. They manage their stress levels. They do things like breathing exercises. They meditate. They can do some yoga. They'll use some body exercises to reduce stress. They eat healthily and they sleep well. Sleep is important for our brains. How much sleep is an individual thing. Interestingly, research just a couple months ago kind of said that for most people, and that's when science does this kind of thing, the average person, about 6.5 hours per night is the sweet spot. In fact, sleeping more than 6.5 hours a night, according to the research, can actually have detrimental impact on your long-term brain health. It's almost like sleeping too much is bad, but we're all different. You know yourself, you know what's good for yourself. So don't follow the science religiously, but just be aware that you need sufficient sleep, but you be careful about sleeping too long as well, because that can have detrimental impact. So all these factors are interrelated. I don't have Harry Potter's magic wand. I can't tell you which one to pursue. Do this one first. What I can tell you is that excessive weight is a negative factor for each of these. I'm going to go back a slide. So you think about, if someone has excessive weight, they're less likely to be physically active. They're less likely to get involved in intellectually stimulating activities. They're more likely to sit around and binge watch Netflix or something. They don't stay socially active. They don't manage their stress levels. And of course, excessive weight is a stress inducer. They don't, obviously not eating healthily, and possibly not sleeping as well either. So excessive weight, again, that's one of the key negatives here, is a negative factor for all those good characteristics. So talking about eating, a lot of research shows that the Mediterranean style of eating practices have been shown to lower the risk for dementia by 30 to 35%. There's a new diet that came out, maybe 3 years ago, called the MIND diet. It combines the Mediterranean diet with some practices from the old DASH, that dietary approach to stop hypertension that was created in 1997. Early studies showed about a 35% reduction in risk for developing Alzheimer's. I've just in the last couple months have been reading some new research studies showing that could be as high as 50 to 60% using this MIND, the MIND diet. So I would encourage you to Google that yourself and look what it means. And also be aware that things like the keto diet, I'm not negative about the keto diet, but I will say that some research has shown that high fat diets like the keto diet, they might actually impair the brain's ability to detect the hormone leptin, which signals us to stop eating. So long-term use of things like high-fat diets, again, I don't know, research is still being done, but might have long-term detrimental impact on brain health and even body health, as it might encourage the increased calorie consumption, because that signal to, hey, I'm full, I should stop eating, might get turned off. The great news is lifestyle changes do work. Reducing your blood pressure, that top number, to below 120. In one study of government workers in the United States, it showed a 19% reduction in cases of MCI, what's called mild cognitive impairment, and a 15% reduction when in both MCI and dementia combined. Walking, Mother Nature is one of the best doctors we have. Walking outdoors and thinking can give you a 75% uptick in creative ideation. So when you're struggling with something, you're struggling to come up with a solution, get up and walk. And if it's too cold to walk, then at least look out the window, look at the skyline, look at the trees, whatever you can do to, and don't look at an electronic device, but that can help you increase your creativity, your ideation, your problem solving. When we're talking about exercise, we're not talking about running marathons or half marathons. 20 to 30 minutes of daily aerobic exercise is all it takes to improve overall cognitive function. So everyone should be following Catherine. She's doing her 20, 30 minutes right now. And, do it while you're listening to a podcast, do it while you're listening to this, but that's all it takes. 20 to 30 minutes a day to improve overall cognitive function. And for older people, which research define as 65 plus, older people who exercise roughly 40 minutes 3 times a week also show a significant cognitive advantage over those who don't exercise at all. So even into your 60s and 70s, keep up that exercise routine. As I mentioned earlier, quality sleep resets the buildup of the synaptic connectivity within our brains. And as I said before, our brains are continuing to grow. We need those new synaptic connections to help grow more brain cells, to embed memories in our brain, to help us control our emotions. And so quality sleep is very important. What doesn't work? Well, all those brain training games and apps that you see on the internet or on late night television, any of these pseudo medicine pills and supplements, things that say, oh, this will increase your brain power by 60%. A lot of research has been done on that. None of it has been proven to work other than the research done by the companies who are selling you those games, those apps, and those pills. Unfortunately, those kind of medicines are not regulated by the FDA, much like vitamins and other things, and so they can get away with it. But don't fall for it. You're much better off just by reducing your blood pressure, managing your stress levels, controlling your weight, and getting some aerobic activity 3 or 4 times a week. So that's what I just said. Manage your blood pressure, control your cholesterol, keep your blood sugar within normal range, be more physically active. One of the things I do, and I'll probably do in a moment here when I finish, is I don't allow participants to sit for more than 50 minutes if I'm doing a classroom training or a webinar. So I will literally have people stand up, and even now, and I'll do that in just a moment. But just stand up, get that blood circulating, eat healthy, lose any extra weight, and obviously quit or never start smoking. And these 7 steps are also known to prevent heart disease and stroke. But again, as I said earlier, our brain is the biggest user of oxygen and blood. So what we do that benefits our heart and prevents stroke is going to be beneficial for our brains as well. Some guidelines, but of course, obviously, these are generalization guidelines. Please check with your medical practitioner, your doctor first. But in general, if you can keep your blood pressure below 135/85, keep your BMI below 25, although some research now says don't worry so much about BMI itself as much as how healthy you are. But again, talk with your medical practitioner. Aerobic activity, 20-25 minutes, say 3 or 4 times a week. Some strength exercises as well, any kind of lifting of weights or isometric exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, those kind of things will help as well. Having that healthy diet, and very important, have that annual physical checkup, have your blood work done, talk to your doctor, spot things in advance, and these will help you build a better brain health as well as physical health. There's an old Irish proverb that goes, "No time for your health today means no time or no health for your time tomorrow." I've modified that for you. No time for your brain health today, no brain health for your time tomorrow. So don't say you can't find 20 to 25 minutes for some aerobic exercise, or you can't find time to eat healthy. Yeah, if that's true, well, then you're not going to have brain health in the future. So make those time. Chinese proverb says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today, is now. Again, I've revised that. It says the best time to start planning your long-term brain health is in your 30s. In your 40s, well, if you're past your 30s and 40s, the second best time is today. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can take steps to help improve your brain health. It is a lifetime pursuit, and it is never too late to start on a path to better brain health. And that's the message I want to share with you. I'm a bit passionate about this. Like I said, I wish I'd known more about this when I was my father's primary health care giver. I encourage people to take this information to heart, and more importantly, pass it on to your family members, particularly younger family members, those who are in their 30s and 40s, that this is something they should be aware of now. Most of us weren't when we were in our 30s and 40s. I have some additional resources for you. Most of them are built, as I said, my book won a few awards. I'm very proud of it. There's a lot in the book about breathing techniques, about meditation, impact on brain health, stress. So there's a lot of information in the book. It's available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle versions. Whoops. And I've just uploaded, just meaning like the last 6 weeks or so, uploaded 10 short videos. Each video is like 5 to 8 minutes on this topic of long-term brain health, how to build it, how to maintain it. It's on my YouTube channel. You can just Google, don't Google, go to YouTube and search for Stephen Howard on leadership. Most of my YouTube videos are on leadership, but this particular series is on brain health. There is a little link here, a short link, if you can write it down. By the way, I will send the slide deck here to the organizers of this presentation. They can share it with you. So if you put your email address in the chat box or let them know you want to copy the presentation, please do so, and they can send you the PDF of these slides, which will have this. But just go search on Stephen Howard on leadership on Google. Sorry, not on Google, on YouTube, and you'll be able to find the series on brain health. And if you like it, please give me a thumbs up. Appreciate that. I also have a program for corporations as well as societies, organizations, called Making Better Decisions, how to shift from being mindful as 2 words to mindful leadership. It runs, these are 4 90-minute virtual programs or a full day classroom session. And there's a link there if you want to learn more about this program for your organization. Again, whether it's a profit organization, a commercial organization, or a nonprofit, or a government organization. Sorry, I lost my train of thought when I saw the message pop up. So it doesn't matter what kind of organization, the information is valuable for you. And I've got facilitators around the world who can deliver the workshop in Spanish, in Hindu, working on somebody in Germany right now. Oh, also in Portuguese. So I've got facilitators around the world who can handle this. I also, on my website, every month, as I mentioned, I keep reading research on this, articles. I give you 20 to 30 links each month on brain health, decision making, mindful leadership. I upload it to my website, which is calianteleadership.com. You can go on the website, there's a resource tab in the upper right hand corner. And if you tab down on that, you'll see brain power and brain health articles, and then another one that says leadership, well-being, mindfulness, leadership, whatever. It's free. Or every month I send an email out to people who want to be notified when I upload those new article links. And if you want, send me an email and just say, please add me to the email distribution list for the brain health articles and the well-being articles. And I'll be happy to do that for you. And if you have any questions, information, there's my contact details. I'm not great at WhatsApp, so I really don't encourage you to send me WhatsApp too often. But send me an email. I'm much better replying on emails than I am to WhatsApp. But I do know, particularly in the Spanish-speaking Latino community, you guys live on WhatsApp, so I can appreciate that, and I will reply as quickly as I can, but only in English. Sorry, I have my limitations. And with that, I open the floor for any general questions you have. I haven't checked the chat box. I'll check it now to see if there were any questions. And over to you guys.
Hey, I just want to mention something that I didn't do at the beginning. Thank you very much, Stephen, for the great information about brain health. For those who doesn't know me, I'm Adriana Fuentes. I'm from Mexico City. I'm Grace of No Age ambassador. And I wrote 3 books about strong women, and Stephen is my coach. He's been my coach for like almost 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, my books didn't be possible without Stephen's help. So he's a great coach, great leader, and he is very supportive with all women. So if you have the opportunity, just you will be so happy if you have a Stephen as a coach. So thank you very much, Stephen, for your help.
You're so kind. Thank you. You're so kind.
And thank you for this very nice webinar. Very, very good information for all of us. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I just want to agree. Thank you so much, Adriana. And thank you so much, Stephen, for being here for us, for Grace of No Age today, and for taking the time. I found the information extremely helpful. I loved it. And I'm going to make sure to get this recording up in our site, and so other people can watch it, listen to it, like you said, as they are stretching maybe, or as a podcast as they are walking, instead of being on the computer or on the phone. And yeah, anyone who's got questions, please, now's the time. Open your microphone if you feel like it. Open your camera and let's get all the information we can from Stephen, because I think it's a unique opportunity we have here tonight.
There is
Tonight for us, yeah.
Thank you everyone for your comments in the chat box. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But there is one from Solcita, and it says, is there some research about brain health and responsible pet ownership? Not that I'm aware of, but I do know that there is a lot of research that shows that pets are a stress reliever. You know, if you're spending time with your pet, you know, particularly a dog, you get outside. One of the nice things about having a dog as a pet, you got to get out and walk them and get out there and get that fresh air, get into nature a little bit, which is very beneficial if you do it with the right mindset. If you don't do it like, oh, it's another chore, I got to take the dog for a walk. But if you can go out there and enjoy Mother Nature when you're allowing your pet to walk, that's great. Cats, of course, I had cats as a child. I know cats are more sedentary. They like to lie around, but they're also stress reducer. And there's, nothing, one of the nice things, my life, I was a teenager, come home from school and there was my cat waiting for me at the door and purring and rubbing against my leg. So it used to relieve my stress of high school, if nothing else. But yeah, I don't know any specific research, but I can tell you that there is research that shows that pets particularly tend to help you reduce your blood pressure as well as your stress levels. I hope that helps you, Solcita.
I was going to ask about alcohol consumption and brain health.
And what about it? Good or bad, or the amount of quantity?
Any information about women in perimenopause or menopause, alcohol, and brain health?
I've seen research on alcohol and brain health, not directly related to perimenopause or menopause, in honesty. But again, that's not an area that I research specifically. Moderate alcohol consumption, again, is being shown more and more to be a stress reliever. More and more you're seeing articles about, 8 drink a day or, 5 drinks a week or something like that. But like almost everything, it's in moderation. One thing I didn't mention to you, as an aside to that, Dominique, which I think is wonderful news, dark chocolate reduces stress. And it helps improve memory. So there's actually research that says the flavonols in dark chocolate, as well as the cocoa, 80%, helps. Unfortunately, again, it's in moderation. So you can't overindulge. Don't go home and tell your significant others that you're binging on 2 candy bars because Stephen said it's good for your brain health. I didn't say that, but in moderation, dark chocolate, it has been shown, and that's in the book itself. I share the research in the book about that as well. So, and that could be a dark chocolate a milkshake, or dark chocolate, hot chocolate in the evenings too. But so that's the good news. There are some good things out there that can help us. But moderate alcohol, definitely, Dominique, to answer your question, all seriousness. I don't know about the relationship to menopause or perimenopause, because that's not an area I focus on. But moderate alcohol consumption it can be shown to be good for brain health.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Please, Mohini?
Yeah, I am from India, and when I log into this webinar, you were explaining one point regarding multitasking and the brain health, And I would love to share with you that in India, many women they have to do multitasking, so there is no other option because they have to look at their kids, they have to look at their job and the house also. They love to pursue their hobbies, so how can they keep their brain health good if they are doing multitasking? And you were telling us that multitasking is bad for
It is.
brain.
What I was referring to, Mohini, is cognitive multitasking. I mean, we can all multitask, particularly on task, on functions. I sometimes listen to a podcast while I'm cooking, for instance. I love to cook. And if it's something I've cooked before, which is kind of routine, and I know how the ingredients go. I kind of have the recipe nearby just to check the timing, whatever. I can listen to a podcast if it's a new recipe, or I'm trying to cook something new. I only focus on the new thing. Yep. So it's really cognitive. Any of us can do functional. We can answer a child's question while we're cooking or whatever we might be doing. But it's that cognitive thing. It's like listening to this thing and then also trying to respond to your emails at the same time. Your brain is trying to absorb information and it's trying to process information, store information, and respond. That kind of multitasking is bad for your brain long term. The fact of life is, many of us do it. Sometimes we feel we have to do it, but research does show you're much better off. For instance, on emails, one of the best things to do is chunk your emails and only look at your emails 2 or 3 times a day. Take care of all that at one time when you can focus on emails. If you have to write a report, focus on the report. Don't allow yourself to be disturbed to the best of your ability. And I know it's not a perfect world, India or otherwise. People are multitasking all the time.
But we do have that one thing in our mind that if we do not multitask, like there might be a fear of missing out, because there is a lot of competition nowadays in the whole world and everyone wants to go ahead. And if I am not like, no, if somebody is not a multitasker, he or she might be miss out from the competition.
Yeah, you might miss some information, but what are you missing out on? I mean, part of that, it depends on what you're missing out on. If you're looking at Instagram all the time to see what what fashions are or what somebody's having for lunch or something like that, what's more important, your brain health or knowing that so and so is eating spaghetti for lunch? If it's information you're processing, research does show you're much better off. You'll retain the information better. You're much better off to focus on that. Like, for instance, I'm a big basketball lover. I love to watch basketball, and there's a lot of commercial breaks in there. I used to think if I read magazine articles during the commercial breaks, that was kind of a multi-task. And then as soon as the commercial's over, I go back to the game. I found I don't retain the information from the articles as well because my brain is still trying to figure out, how's the game going? What's the strategy? Who's winning? Who's losing? Blah, blah, blah. And so I don't retain the information. So when I'm watching basketball, I'm watching basketball. When I'm reading articles, I'm reading articles. I don't leave CNN on. I don't want that distraction of the news in the background or the sports ESPN or anything. When I'm reading articles, I'm only focused on articles. That's best for your brain health. And it's more productive as well. You won't miss out. You might miss out on a few things, but you'll be better at what you retain.
Yes,
And
I got your point. Thank you so much.
my play, and when you get the slides, put your email, because if you missed some of those slides, the Stanford research, if you missed that part of the presentation, that research is very, very revealing about the fact that if you're multitasking, not only are you less productive when you're multitasking, you're actually less productive when you're not multitasking because your brain's being trained not to focus. Moon likes the great news about the chocolate. Angela says, what would you say to somebody with a 9-to-5 job, which involves primarily sitting? How best should they handle movement? Well, do what I'm going to do because I've been sitting too long myself. Just, get up once in a while. Just move your torso. If it's safe for you, if you are, and I got to move the chair back to make it safe, just, lift your knee up towards your waist just a few times. Just every 55 minutes, get up and move around. When I'm on a call like this and I'm the participant, I will at this point turn my camera off and I'll just for 5 minutes, I'll be listening, but I'll be doing kind of what Catherine was doing earlier, although her routine was much more vigorous than I might attempt. But she does it all the time. Just get up and move. Get out and get some fresh air as much as you can. One of the things I do, and I highly recommend to people, if you can control your calendar, don't allow yourself to have back-to-back meetings. Now, I did a 90-minute webinar this morning. I had 20 minutes before this webinar. What did I do? I went out on the balcony. I got some fresh air. I just closed I didn't look at email. I just let my brain reset from the 90 minutes that I had just delivered. About 5 or 6 minutes, but I spent 5 or 6 minutes just kind of looking out, watching the birds fly by, get some fresh air. I made a cup of coffee. I came in here. I got my mind focused. Okay, now the different topic, different audience. Now I'm focused for this. So where you can, give your brain a chance to recuperate. Don't run back-to-back meetings when you can. So I recommend to people, if you're running a meeting, run the meeting for 45 minutes. Even though you might book it for an hour, but run your meeting for 45 minutes. Give your brain 5 minutes to reset. Put down whatever you have to recall from the meeting you just had. Give your brain 5 minutes of relaxation. No emails, no notifications. Call a friend. Talk about non-business if you want. Talk to somebody. That's good. And then 5 minutes to prepare for the next meeting. If not, the other part about to answer Angela is just get up and move. Just move. Solcita says she works as a canine behavior consultant. Sorry, screen's too small. Canine behavior consultant. I always try to make my clients more proactive about their own health to build healthy habits, deeper bonds with dogs. Thank you. No, that's good. And get them out there walking. Yeah, and Mohini, as Moon says, they're going to put this on the YouTube channel so you can watch the part that you missed.
Angela, you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes,
ahead.
I do. I have another question, Stephen. And my question relates to our current environment. Because a lot of people are now home or they're working at home, and it relates back to your comment on excessive being sedentary for too long and lacking physical exercise. What would you suggest in terms of motivational topics or any motivational suggestions you may have for those who are now at home, either looking for work or bored and just sitting down too much and not getting involved in physical exercise? Or
Great.
small business owners who are stuck and, depressed.
Yeah, a great question, and so true today, and that's why depression and stress and anxiety are all increasing. Little things you can do. For instance, if you're sitting around all the time, when you go shopping, park your car as far as you comfortably feel safe away from the grocery store or the supermarket or the department store. And if nothing else, walk. If you're going to go to a shopping center, give yourself an extra 10 minutes just to do one lap around the shopping center. Just walk around. Just walking is one of the best things for you. Don't park as close you can and then run in and run out and jump back in your car. If you can find a few extra minutes, so that's just one easy thing, because you're going to have to go out and do grocery shopping or Christmas shopping or whatever at certain points of time. So, and again, obviously, if the weather is conducive to having that walk outside, if not, walk in the shopping center, give yourself some extra time. Well, I love that. I'm the same thing. I've been working at home since 1993, and a couple of weeks ago, I went out to go to do some Christmas shopping at a shopping center nearby here, and I spent 30 minutes just walking around, looking at the decorations, and then I spent 30 minutes doing my Christmas shopping, and I left after an hour. But the first 30 minutes, I just walked around. I went and bought a Starbucks coffee and walked around with my drink in hand and just kind of looked at decorations and listened to the music and got a little bit of exercise, got a little bit of movement. That's all it takes. The other thing is, one thing you can do, there's a great app that I use, and it's called, I wish I could remember it. I Am. So just look up AM, 2 words. And you can program it as you want. In my case, it sends out motivational messages. I program it. It sends me a message 7 times a day. And I don't always look at it. Like I said, sometimes my phone's on airplane mode. But when I turn it on, I'll see the message. It says, "Are you mindful?" 2 words, or mindful. And that's just my little reminder to me, like, okay, the last 10 minutes, have I been scattered brain, monkey brain, or am I being focused? Okay, now I should be focused. So you can do the same thing. Have I moved? Or time to move. Just send yourself a message every 90 minutes that says time to move. And that reminds you to get up and move around just a little bit. So you can, sometimes the phones are beneficial, sometimes they're not.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Angela, my pleasure. And thank you, Adriana, for letting me know Angela had that question. Okay, I don't see anything else in the chat. Anybody else?
Okay, so I think we can also, if someone has any other questions, they can just let us know when we post it at Grace of No Age, and we'll gladly pass them on to Stephen, and he can get back to you with any more comments, if Stephen is fine with that.
Yeah, that's
And
fine. Happy
excellent.
to. And
Excellent. So thank you very much again. It's been a super, super interesting talk. Actually, as I mentioned at the beginning, I needed to go, but I just pushed my time so I could stay till the end because I thought it was too interesting to leave, and which means I'm going to finish working late tonight, but it was totally worth it. Thanks for being here, Stephen. Thanks, Adriana, for helping us organize. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Just stay tuned because plenty of more things coming at Grace of No Age during this Christmas and New Year's Eve period. So thank you. We're gonna just cut it here, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Stephen.
My pleasure. Happy holidays, everyone, and best wishes for continued success this year.